Ugin the Ineffable. He's a weird planeswalker, but is he a powerful planeswalker? And more importantly, is he a fun planeswalker? Well, if you're looking for the answers to these questions, you've come to the right place. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you to Webcore for letting me preview this planeswalker for you and give you a nice honest review on him. So he is a new colorless planeswalker to hit the vault. We can take a look at everything he's got going for himself. I don't have the screenshot here, but his deck limits are 6 creatures, 6 spells, and 7 supports, which makes him a little bit stronger than the Karns in terms of how much cards of each type you can put into them. But we can also talk about the mana bonuses here. Similar to every other colorless planeswalker, it starts with a +1 spread across the board, and then almost all of them have a way to bump that mana bonus as you go with abilities. And so let's talk about how you do that with this one. Okay, so first ability, Elder Insight. Exile the top 4 cards of your library. Increase your loyalty bonus by 3 and all your other mana bonuses by 1. These bonuses can't be raised by this ability more than 3 times. Then gain X mana. X is equal to your loyalty bonus. Okay, so let's talk about that, break it down a bit. So you're exiling the top 4 cards of your library, which is not something that is really that consequential in the early game, unless you're doing things like Surveil, which kind of filter through your deck, so that kind of changes things there, but it's the least impactful part of this ability. Increase your loyalty bonus by 3 and your other bonuses by 1. So that is interesting because I don't know if we've ever had a planeswalker that lets you increase its loyalty bonus by, especially via a loyalty ability. So you hit this ability once and you get a +2 across the board on your colored bonuses, but you get a +3 on the loyalty. So you hit this 3 times, you max it out, and you're at a +4 across the board with your mana bonuses, but you get a +9 on loyalty, I believe. Yeah. So you get a +4 on your colored mana bonuses, but then you get a +9 on your loyalty if you're able to hit this 12 times. So at the most, you're going to get 9 mana into your hand from hitting this ability when it's maxed out. So that's something to think about there. But that loyalty cost of 12 makes it so that you're not really able to spam this ability very often. It's actually going to be really hard to do that in a way that's really consistent in my testing of this ability. So that is really something that has really given a lot of the community members pause on this here, but we could get into how to build around this later on. Second ability, Rendezvous with Spirits. Move the first 3 cards from your exile to your hand. Create 4 colorless spirit tokens. Your spirit creature tokens gain Defender and Flying. This is the ability I probably use the least out of them because, okay, you're creating 4 colorless spirit tokens, and what are those exactly? They are 2/2 spirits. When this creature dies, return the first card from your exile to your hand. That's not something we even worry about too much. So what we're doing here is we're basically making an 8/8 flying defender, which is all right. But for 16 loyalty, when these other abilities cost so much, it's probably not going to be the one you're using very often. And then Imprisonment on the Meditation Realm. Exile all colored cards. This effect can affect Vanguard supports. Create a Spirit Gem token and gain an extra swap. And what is that Spirit Gem token? So this is where the power of this Planeswalker lies. It's a colorless support artifact with 5 shields. 5 shields is important. This support can't be reinforced. When you match a loyalty gem by swap, convert 3 gems to loyalty gems. When you activate a loyalty ability for the first time during your turn, your opponent loses life equal to their highest mana bonus. So this ability is key because it really helps to get everything else in your deck really going. And if you're using this ability to get more of your loyalty abilities possible to re-trigger, then you're going to want to build your deck around getting to this third ability as soon as possible. But also, another thing that makes this Planeswalker very unique is the fact that using this loyalty ability exiles all colored cards. So that means you're exiling both your side and your opponent's side. So if you're facing a Planeswalker that has all colored cards, you're pretty much wiping their side of the board completely. And you're also doing the same for you, unless you're playing all colorless cards. So I built around this ability in a really meaningful way. The first two things I thought about: what colorless cards do I have that are powerful and can hold their own? And number two, what cards do I have that will gain me loyalty as much as possible? So let's talk about that. This is my deck I call hardcore because you have to have a pretty hardcore collection to build it. We got the first thing that we're going to be doing here is looking at Golden Wish, which converts 20 gems to loyalty gems, and it is going to be rare that this doesn't get you full loyalty just from casting it. It is a 21 mana cost card, though, so at his mana bonuses, if you're not getting any cascades, it's going to take you 7 turns to get there. So what we have to do instead is put out something like Mana Crypt first, which if you hit its mana field, the first card in your hand that can gain mana gains full mana, then you lose 9 life. And then at the beginning of your turn, convert 3 gems to your Planeswalker's colors. In a colorless Planeswalker, that basically just means a random color that it's going to convert to, and sometimes you'll get matches out of that, but not usually. The real thing is, this is going to be giving us the engine to cast such high cost cards here. We got Cityscape Leveler, Portal to Phyrexia, Mox Opal, Gra's Unstoppable Juggernaut. These are all really high cost cards. So we got Mana Crypt and also Cryptics. At the beginning of your turn, convert 5 gems to one of the colors of your greatest mana bonuses. So, like I said before, that's just going to make a random color conversion. It won't do loyalty gems. But this card is really powerful in most Planeswalkers decks. So it's no different here. It's just here for a different reason. And Golden Wish, the first 2 artifact cards from your library get full mana, so you're going to be casting them on that turn as well. So you're likely going to be getting either a Cryptics, a Portal to Phyrexia. Any of these artifacts in our library have a chance of making it to the board. So Portal to Phyrexia is going to be mostly a defensive card for us, but it can pull cards from our opponent's library depending on what other things they're playing. If they have graveyard tactics in their deck, it's nice to go against like a Blossoming Tortoise because the tortoise is going to be filling their graveyard for you. Therefore, you can grab yourself an Atraxa or a Galta or anything else to put into play for you. So, really strong card in this deck. Cityscape Leveler is our other line of defense. When you cast this card or this creature attacks, destroy your opponent's last creature. If you can't destroy an opposing support, then your opponent creates a Power Stone token. So, good way to clear the board if his third ability doesn't do that for you. And then these 2 colorless creatures are pretty fun to have in this deck because Threefold Thunderhulk is an artifact gnome creature, colorless. When this creature enters the battlefield, create X gnomes. X is this creature's power. When a gnome creature you control dies or loses a reinforcement, this creature gets +1/+1. At the beginning of your turn, you may have target gnome creature you control lose a reinforcement. If you do, this creature gains double strike. So it's a fairly cheap creature, has pretty good effects. We're mostly using it for the gnome token generation and also it being colorless because of Gra's Unstoppable Juggernaut. At the beginning of combat on your turn, your other creatures gain the Juggernaut subtype until the beginning of your next turn. The base power and toughness of your other creatures become 5/3 until the beginning of your next turn. So we go from having these little 1/2 gnomes to 5/3 gnomes. So that's going to be the main thing that's going to be dealing the damage for us from this deck. Unless, you steal something nasty from the Portal to Phyrexia. But even so, if it's a colored creature or something like that, you're going to be exiling it every time you hit its third ability. And you're going to be wanting to use that third ability a lot anyway. So we have to mostly rely on our own creatures to make the damage happen. And I guess spamming that third ability does a decent amount of damage after a while too. So this is my hardcore build, but guess what? I have a budget version of it. So we're changing a few things here. We're adding a few more cheap removal spells. Shieldress Edict, Endless Detour, and Molten Collapse. This is a colored creature, but it creates colorless tokens. So we can always just toss this one when we're ready to hit its third ability. So there's not a lot different here. We just don't have Golden Wish available to us. So this is going to be a loyalty gem converter. It's a land, Voldaren Estate from Crimson Vow. So you probably have this one if you've been playing a while. So there's that. And then this card is also a colored creature, but the reason it's in here is because at the beginning of your turn, gain 3 loyalty. So that's just free loyalty every turn, just for having them on the board. And so that helps with that. And yeah, I think that's the rest. Sunken Citadel, convert 7 gems to the most present color on the board. At the beginning of your turn, increase all your positive mana bonuses by 2 until the end of turn. So that's also a lot of great things happening for Ugin. Very good card to have in this deck if you don't have something like the Moxes or Mana Crypt or anything like that to help other things get on the board. The win rate on both of these decks is pretty similar. It's just that the other one has a few more answers to fast starts than this one does. But once it gets rolling, you're really relying on Yugen's abilities to help you stay alive anyway. So yeah, if you pick up this Yugen, give these decks a try and see how you like them. There are so many different ways to play with this Planeswalker, it being colorless, but it's also a little bit limited in the restrictions of his mana bonuses and that third ability wiping away colored supports. But if you are interested in checking out what everyone else is doing, make sure to follow Nalthazar, Gaussmaster, Planeswalker Coach, and recently Nerd Thuggery's PodQuest podcast, he did a short review on his experiences with Ugin too. So you can definitely get a lot of different insights from all the content creators out there these days. So let's go to my grades for this Planeswalker. Okay, it's time to give out grades to Ugin the Ineffable. Mana spread. Well, he's got to get a D for me, because it'd be one thing if you could easily increase his mana bonuses, but it's locked behind a loyalty ability that costs 12 loyalty to trigger, and it only increases your mana bonuses by 1 at a time, and it's capped off at 3, and you can only get 7 mana per color match, compared to 10 for Karn. So the fact that it costs so much loyalty to even get it to a pretty much middle of the road mana gain makes it really pretty subpar for me. Next we got Ability 1. Well, it is the one way to get your colored mana bonuses up from just his abilities alone, and the loyalty gain is a nice, interesting, and unique possibility with this Planeswalker. The other parts of it don't do a lot for me, but it is something that can help in the mid game, but it's just so expensive. So it's just really too hard to really trigger as many times as you really need it to. So you just don't end up using it nearly as much as you want to, even if it is a fairly useful ability when you're able to do it. So it gets a C minus for me. Ability 2, this is one that it just doesn't do a lot for you. The nice thing about it is that it guarantees you keep a creature on the board if you use its third ability and you're playing other colored creatures for whatever reason. So it's just okay. So it gets a C. And its third ability. So this is where his power mainly lies, so it better be a good one. And it is pretty good. I mean, it's basically a global board wipe for both sides. It gets rid of vanguards, which can be really helpful because a lot of abilities don't do that for you. And it kind of gets everything going for you once you have been able to hit it a few times. So this one is actually pretty good. So I give it a B plus. It'll definitely help you to use this if you're falling behind and it's taking you a long time to get to your third ability, but it's always worth it. His versatility. The problem is if you're building around his abilities, that actually kind of limits you to the permanents you could keep on board, but it does allow for some interesting and unique builds that will not only keep your colorless cards safe, but make sure that your opponent gets penalized for using their own. So I'm giving it a B minus in versatility. He's not the most versatile in some ways, but it does open up a lot of deck styles that you probably would have never considered. Card utility. The problem with him is his mana spread and just his mana gains kind of limits certain things to be useful with him because you need ways to cheat cards into play, give them full mana easily, or just build around getting loyalty generators. So I give it a C because he's really good for building around colorless cards, but not so great everywhere else. But fortunately, right now in Standard, there's a lot of good colorless cards in the game, so there is that. And fun. So, with everything I've said so far, he's actually surprisingly fun to use. I think because he's such a novelty and he makes you really think about different types of decks and how to build around them. He is kind of a puzzle on his own, just making sure that you gave yourself all the advantages you can have and turn your opponent's supposed advantages into a disadvantage with his third ability. I actually found myself liking playing with him a lot more than I thought I would. I don't recommend him for newer players because I think it's just too advanced of a planeswalker to really understand it. But if you're a really seasoned veteran of this game and you're just looking for planeswalkers that bring an interesting and unique dimension to the game, then I would definitely recommend picking him up for that reason. So he gets an A minus for me. That actually counts for a lot. I would say that fun when you're playing a game like this will keep you very interested in the game. So I definitely don't want to discount that. So my final grade for him is probably going to be in the C plus range when you think about everything that his weaknesses are. The fun factor kind of coupled with the third ability, which is where a lot of the fun comes from, and a decent amount of versatility because of that. It makes you really think outside the box for playing with him. The problem is, I probably would not use him in most ranked events, especially coalition events, because he's just so narrow in what you can build for. If you're trying to build for objectives and you have all these other considerations in mind, like in colorless builds, you may or may not have the ability to hit a lot of objectives with that. So with a lot of people, the most important thing is winning in coalition events to support their teams. It's hard for me to recommend him for that. So I think overall the community has spoken and agreed that planeswalkers that give you an advantage in coalition events are the most valuable. And I just don't think that he's up there for that. So that's why I'm giving him a C plus overall. Still very fun. Still, I think if you're the type of player that really likes to get into the minutia of the game and just find new synergies and new cool things to do with the planeswalkers and the cards available to us, give them a shot. So even if you don't end up picking them up for real life cash, definitely save up a good stack of crystals for him when he comes out if you're that type of player. Okay, well, that'll do it for me, and I hope that you got a lot out of watching this video. If you're interested in another colorless planeswalker that's up your alley, check out my review of Karn the Great Creator, which should be hitting the vault sometime soon.